All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Museum of the Albemarle for today's History for Lunch presentation. We're glad that y'all could join us. For those of y'all here in the auditorium, please remember just to silence your cell phones. For those of y'all on Zoom, please mute your microphone and use the chat for your questions. We'll have our usual Q&A session at the end of the lecture. Now, a few reminders about some upcoming events and programs. We do still have a few spots available for our designer workshop. That's on Saturday, November 15th from 10 to 1. So you'll get to learn how to manipulate different alcohol inks on paintings and scarves. Those light lunch provided. If you're interested in that, there is a registration fee, but the form is at the front desk. So you can pick that up on your way out. And then our next, and also the last History for Lunch for the year, is going to be on Wednesday, November 19th. We're going to have a lecture and book signing. Award-winning author Andrew Lawler is going to be here. His book is called A Perfect Frenzy, a Royal Governor, His Black Allies, and the Crisis That Spurred the American Revolution. So he's going to focus on the events in 1775 and 76 in Virginia and North Carolina, and the ways that patriots and loyalists shaped those events, and then how they're reflected in today's headlines. So definitely join us for that lecture on November 19th. As usual, we take a break from History for Lunch in December because of our holiday programming. So our holiday open house is going to be Saturday, December 6th from 10 until 3 with lots of hands-on activities, Santa, face painting, petting zoo. So that can be for young and old alike. So definitely join us for that on December 6th as well. Now, today we welcome Jon Stull. He is a retired Marine and a docent for the Great Bridge Battlefield and Waterways Museum. He's presently the president of its foundation, and he joins us today to share with us the Battle of Great Bridge in Virginia and its significance to both Virginia and the American Revolution as a whole. So please join us in welcoming our guest speaker.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction, and it's great to be here. I have tied my white steed up to the post outside the museum and was greeted with constables at the door. It's very nice to see you here. Now, I'm using this magic screen or lantern, and this very odd-looking stick is in front of me. I am told that I am not supposed to move much from this spot. So with your apologies, I will try the best I can. I'm used to walking all around. But my name is Jon Stull, as was mentioned, and I am a docent with the Great Bridge Battlefield and Waterways Museum. What I'd like to do today is talk to you about my favorite subject, particularly now that we're on our 250th anniversary, but the furious fall of 75 and what it means to Great Bridge, to Virginia, to the national story, and by extension, what it means to those down here in North Carolina along the Carolina Sounds. Now, forgive me in advance if I hit the wrong buttons. I will do the best I can. My handlers from the Committee of Safety don't know about this type of technology. So, but yes, the Battle of Great Bridge. Usually when I have visitors come to the museum, I'll present them with 3 questions. Not that I'm going to answer them right up front, but it's something I'd like them to consider, no matter where they go in a museum, if it's about an event. You know, how and why does it start? Why did it start where it did? In our case, Great Bridge, and so what? Why does it matter? And for this particular battle, it's interesting because why do subjects of the crown who take great pride in being part of arguably the world's greatest empire fire on His Majesty's troops? That is a very significant event. Secondly, why Great Bridge? You have the vast dominion of Virginia, the old dominion, and Great Bridge is just the corner of the Dismal Swamp. It seems odd that something that would be of great impact would happen there. And then lastly, okay, why does it matter? It's a 30-minute battle. It is the 1/10 the size of Bunker Hill, which preceded it in June of 75. So why does this matter for those that are here at Great Bridge? So I'll try that. But then also, in addition, all right, what's the play for the North Carolinians? What significance do they play in this? To consider the nature of battle, usually to figure out why people start, you got to go back to the previous battle, or at least the decade before, to see what kind of challenges there were. And of course, the early colonial times, or if you get to 1763, at the close of the French and Indian War, the colonies don't expand all the way into their current state lines, but basically are coastal enclaves centered around ports. Why? Because it's a mercantilist economy, getting raw materials from a native source, or raw materials, and getting them back to England or to the European country for refinement, and then selling them back to the colonists and to Europe. So this is somewhat of the outlook. Of course, the French and Indian War, or the Great War for Empire, or the 7 Years' War, depending who you're talking to and what context, had great impact. And that particular impact was the security of the colonies that were there. It obviously eliminated the French from competing for North America, and tended to shift the global balance of power. England now has a predominant role of North America east of the Mississippi. It provides for security because the agreement includes the indigenous, or the Native Americans, that had been hostile to settlement. Military prowess is developed and shared to a certain degree, although that also starts to put a burr under the colonial saddle, because the colonials, as provisional forces, are never handled on an equal basis with the regulars from Britain. Development of commerce, of course, war tends to try to constrict it, but then privateers try to get beyond it, and smuggling has been a common practice along the eastern seaboard. This does come with an encouragement of political self-reliance, but the period of salutary neglect of 150 years, where Great Britain didn't really care how we managed ourselves. We would do that locally, but then they'd pull the raw materials. So that's pretty much been embodied in what we experienced. And certainly in Virginia, home of what many would say was the oldest legislative body, the House of Burgesses, that has a long tradition. But it came at a cost, and part of that was the restriction of the proclamation line, which then, I will attempt to do this, basically limits white settlement beyond the Appalachians. Unfortunately, there already is settlement beyond the Appalachians. So is the Crown now saying you have to take down what you've cleared and created and take it back to the east side of the Appalachians? It creates a lot of friction. But more so, what we hear about all the time when I ask students that come, well, why what causes the war for independence? Certainly, taxation without representation is the bumper sticker, although all those attitudes and those restrictions and being treated as a second-class citizen starts to get into the colonists and makes it difficult for them to be content with the status quo. In that, trying to work the colonies, there's many different watersheds, and there's many different rivers that are key, in particular the Hudson, the Delaware, the Susquehanna, but two very large watersheds, the Chesapeake Bay and the Carolina Sounds, are phenomenal. The Chesapeake Bay could reach up 250 miles from Great Bridge, in fact, all the way to Elkton, Maryland, and then for the Carolina Sounds. Once in the Carolina Sounds, you could make it all the way down to Newburgh. The navigation may be tricky, but once you have found your way down, you didn't have to keep worrying about the tides and the winds and passing the bar in and out through the blue to get back down the colonial on the coastal side. Wouldn't it be great if we could connect those two? And that's the challenge, is that 10-mile isthmus of land that separates the Chesapeake Bay from the Carolina Sounds. They always wanted to build a canal. In fact, in 1774, the House of Burgesses, with the approval of the governor, passed a bill that said to survey and to be prepared a canal that very much is along the line of the Albemarle and Chesapeake Canal now. But short of that, they built a road. They built the Great Road that would connect Norfolk to the Northwest River, thus a connection to the Carolinas. Why? Well, agricultural products both here and in southeastern Virginia, northeastern Carolinas, vast areas for farming. A lot of product and produce can come from there. And then increasingly, the importance of harvesting what's in the Great Dismal Swamp. The native trees at the time, tall pine for masts, tar, pitch, turpentine, shingles. These are all valuable and can be used not just locally, but can be shipped out. So in the late 1600s, they create the Great Road that connects then Norfolk at the very end, at the top, with a land route to Kemp's Landing, now Kempsville, crossing the eastern branch of the Elizabeth River down to Great Bridge that then crosses the southern branch of the Elizabeth River, and then on to the Northwest River. Northwest River then can feed into the Carolina Sound. So this is the route of connectivity for commerce, for communications, other than breaking out into the blue and then trying to break back in and vice versa. So there is a long string of attempts to stay up and out of the swamp, because most of the area, in fact, colonial maps identify that Dismal Swamp is all the area that's south of the James and north of the Albemarle, that's east of the Suffolk Rift. So it's a vast area. But what's important is after that is after we're transporting, we're used to this, and much of the colonial economy is buzzing along fairly well with depressions depending on the price of tobacco, which was a challenge in the early 70s. We come upon April of 75. Again, on the 18th of April, 75, hardly a man is now alive that remembers that fateful day and year. Paul Revere's ride on the eve of Lexington and Concord. What's fascinating about that is that the 2 days after Lexington and Concord, on the 19th of April, our governor then raids the magazine. Our governor, meaning Virginia, Lord Dunmore, raids the magazine in Williamsburg and has his Royal Marines help themselves at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to 16 half casks of black powder. Well, this enrages the Virginia Convention, which had been the House of Burgesses, but now meets as a convention outside of the authority of the governor. And they insist that there needs to be payment or that powder be returned. Eventually, that discussion goes on. They try to mobilize militia, which they had just the previous month decided to raise. So it hasn't been a long establishment of a militia under the auspices of the Virginia Convention. But they finally start to move them. But before they move on to Williamsburg, an agreement is made, a payment is made for the purchase of the powder. So things settle down for a week or two, and most of May, it's content in Williamsburg. But then there's a second incident at that magazine the first week of June. And it so enrages the populace because young colonials got injured with booby traps that the governor felt too uncomfortable to stay and didn't want his family at risk. And so he loads his family aboard, I will use the term HMS, but that doesn't really become in existence until the 1790s. But the HMS Magdalen and his family returns to England while he cross decks to the HMS Fowey and then moves from the York River down into Norfolk and becomes the second governor to attempt to administer his colony from aboard ship. The first governor to abandon his palace is who? Josiah Martin has done this in the spring. The second is Lord Dunmore in Virginia, and then there'll be a series of others who try the same thing, is to administer a colony from aboard ship. Difficult to do. Lord Dunmore knows he needs to get control of the colony, and he doesn't need a lot of force, but he needs some. All he has at his disposal right now is anywhere from 3 to 5 sloops of war or commercial ships that can be armed that can assist him. So he can control the water, but he can't reach out and really control the land, other than using the Royal Marines or sailors that could assist and augment as they go ashore. But it's not a great force. So he appeals to those, the headquarters up in New York and in Boston, and finally is, in the end of July, is given a company of the 14th Regiment of Foot. So light infantry company, 60 men under the leadership of Captain Samuel Leslie are there for his disposal. And so at the end of July, he tries to find them barracks, which he does on the Portsmouth side, or what was then known as Gosport. When I say Gosport, think now in terms of Norfolk Naval Shipyard, because it continued to be a shipyard and is now one of the biggest shipyards in the world. As they try to get settled in the month of August, that small force of 60 men, a company, starts to raid and starts to find cannon and black powder that, in Lord Dunmore's mind, the insurrectionists are hiding, very much like what happened up in New England. But what surprises everyone is, come the first week of September, a major storm slams into the Carolinas, wreaks havoc with New Bern, rolls on up and does the same to Hampton Roads, on to Annapolis and Philadelphia, all the way up to New York, and then starts to head out. But then either there's a second storm or a regeneration of that storm slams into the Maritimes. Hundreds of ships and thousands are lost with that second storm or the regeneration of this. But this first storm, what some have called the Hurricane of Independence, ravages the coast. And like with many storms, many things are run ashore. The tenders, the lighterage from the Royal Navy, and in this case, the HMS Otter, are pushed ashore at Hampton. Now, you'd think that wouldn't be a big problem, but citizens of Hampton are considering it their property, not the Royal Navy's property. So there's this contest now on, you must give it back. We won't give it back. It's ours. You must give it back. So that debate continues on and ends up going into press. The one paper in Norfolk, Norfolk's only and first paper, was the Norfolk Intelligencer. John Hunter Holt is its printer, and they're printing articles that Lord Dunmore and his senior naval folks find very uncomfortable. What I would tell visitors to the museum is probably one of our earliest cases of fake news as far as an administration was concerned. And their solution was, all right, take the Royal Marines ashore. We want to raid. We're going to dismember that press, disassemble it, bring it aboard my ship, and now we'll put out the right word. So a time where I time travel a little bit with this to Mark Twain, where many times he has said, well, history may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes. With that incident, that enrages the Virginia Convention that the citizens of Norfolk didn't resist the disassembly of the press, and now free press has been violated. So this leads those conditions, the hurricane, the press, into what I call the furious fall of 75, because from that, then we have a raid on Hampton to try to regain the goods or the materials that the citizens of Hampton have kept back from the Royal Navy. And in fact, that is our Lexington. First blood is drawn or spilled there on both sides. And that is followed in this month with the raid or the movement of Royal troops to Kemp's Landing, and then a ambush that takes place, which is then sets the conditions for the Battle of Great Bridge, and based on that result, the burning of Norfolk. Let me just put that geographically before you. Again, you see the triangle is Norfolk, and then the various cities at the time that were of concern. The capital is Williamsburg. Holt's press is seized in Norfolk in September, at the end of September. This enrages, like I said, the Committee of Safety. And so they charge Colonel William Woodford, who was a veteran of the French and Indian War, had fought with Washington in the Virginia Provisional Regiment. They have made him a colonel and made him commander of the 2nd Virginia Regiment. You are to use your best endeavors for protecting and defending the persons and properties of all friends to the cause of America, and to this end, to attack, kill, or captivate all such as you shall discover to be in arms for annoying of those persons as far as you shall judge as prudent to engage them. Basically giving him the task to take his regiment across the river and drive Lord Dunmore out of Norfolk. Well, in order to do that, he's got to assemble his troops and then to make that happen across the river. So with that task now, that will then follow after the raid at Hampton, as you see there, then Kemp's Landing, then Great Bridge. And so that is just to your north, only a few miles away. So it not only impacts us, but because that trade and that commerce is going between the Chesapeake and the Carolina Sounds, it impacts our neighbors to the south as well. If I was to take another look at a map of that time, you can clearly see the challenges here with the Currituck County, Pasquotank, and Perquimans, and then the military structure that revolves and centers around Edenton becomes critical as a reinforcement or a backup for what might be possible to assist items that take place here along the Elizabeth River to impact Norfolk itself. To look at it in a more tactical nature, this building of energy comes to a head 250 years ago, come this December 9th. The units that are involved primarily are one, the British regulars. By the end of October, Dunmore has been reinforced with another company of grenadiers. Now, grenadiers are big men, 6 foot or greater. And of course, you put that bearskin cap on top of them, they look like they're 7 feet. I would add that the average height of a colonial male at this time is 5'6", 5'4". So that's given away some heft. They're all armed with a brown vest, a musket with a bayonet on it as long as my forearm. It's a pretty imposing sight. So now Dunmore has 2 companies. He has 60 grenadiers. He has 60 light infantry. Not a great force, but perhaps what he needs. He decides to declare martial law in Virginia. And so he creates what's known as Dunmore's Proclamation, and he signs it on the 7th of November. But how do you get the word out? Come the 1st of November, he knows also that William Woodford has assembled troops and is attempting to cross the James. He makes his first attempt the first week of November. It is intercepted by the HMS Kingfisher and the Otter, who are patrolling the James. So he knows that this is about. But by the end of the first week, they are successful, and William Woodford has crossed that body of water. So now he has to take precautions on what he wants to do. If he has these regular forces, he needs to augment them with provisionals, which is standard practice. So he creates the Queen's Own Loyal Regiment of whites that are either landowners or indentured servants. And then he also identifies the Ethiopian Brigade and recruits enslaved who are owned by rebels to join his forces, fight for the king, and then all will be given, both the indentured and the enslaved will be given their freedom after the service to the king. Well, this sounds pretty good. There's no knowledge right now that this is going to last more than one engagement. You know, nobody has this concept that this is going to be a 6.5-year engagement. So it starts to draw hundreds in both categories. So Lord Dunmore feels fairly content. He does this by taking his proclamation and publishing it out at Kempsville. On the other side, the units are basically the 2nd Virginia Regiment under the leadership of Colonel William Woodford, augmented by 350 or 7 companies of the Culpeper Minutemen, which were from the northern counties of Virginia, the frontier. Now it's wine country, but then it was the frontier. And they come down to augment his force. So he has 600 plus that he crosses the James with, and then tries to recruit militia as he closes in on Great Bridge. But what about the North Carolinians? Your structure here basically centers on what I've outlined in red, the Edenton area. It becomes the Edenton Military District, and uses the resources, the men from Bertie, Chowan, Currituck, Hertford, Pasquotank, Perquimans, and Tyrell, breaks it into organizations similar but not identical to Virginia. North Carolina also establishes 2 regular regiments, but then county militias and minute regiments or Minutemen, similar to Carolina, similar to Virginia. And of course, it is those county militias that start to assist us as the cry goes out for assistance in Great Bridge. If we take a closer look, and some of this research was done by Pat Hannum, an associate of mine, on the 1st of December, the Virginia Convention then accepts the formal request by North Carolina to assist in this. And so that frees up people, the willingness, it frees up resources to come further north to assist us at Great Bridge. And I believe there's somewhat of a trickle. There's volunteers, gentlemen from North Carolina just have friends or family up this way and want to assist. And then as that takes place, then also you have county militias that start to organize and start to trickle up. Many of these forces, there's presence of both Pasquotank and Perquimans militia for the battle. There's also some evidence that Colonel Edward Vail, who is the regimental commander of the district militia of Edenton, makes it up there prior to the battle. But the ones that don't are the North Carolina regulars under the command of Robert Howe. They get up there to Great Bridge on about the 11th or the 12th of December. They augment the force, but they weren't there necessarily for the battle. But I would submit there's close to 180 to 200 North Carolinians that are there for the battle. Their role is undetermined. Nobody's made diary entries or journals as to what units did what. So it's somewhat left to whatever gets said in pension records, and as we try to trace that down to first-person sources. If I was to put it graphically, this is taking a look at a map that of Virginia back at the time. Notice that north is at the bottom of this map. Hopefully you can make it out all right. We've got Suffolk is on that position where the triangle is, Norfolk then where the spinning diamond is. And so the scale on this, in addition to it being north at the bottom, is about 8 miles as you take a look at these features. We have knowledge that Woodford, Lord Dunmore has knowledge that Woodford has crossed the river. So he has to protect and wants to ensure that he can control the Great Bridge and the Great Road that leads to Carolina. So Carolina is at the top of the map. The Great Road connects it to the southern branch of the Elizabeth River. In order to do that, then he takes his newly arrived grenadiers and goes to Great Bridge, constructs a fort. He humbly names it Fort Murray, his family name. And then on their movement to Kemp's Landing on that second week of November, he's ambushed by Patriots. It's a hasty ambush. They're not well trained. The British counter it with their muskets, and the Patriots flee into the swamp. Several are killed and captured. Some are drowned in the swamp. What I would submit to you is this is the first impression that the Grenadiers have on how Virginians will fight, is that if you show them resolve, they will flee. So I think this plays as we get closer to Great Bridge. Once they establish themselves in Kemp's Landing, he publishes his proclamation establishing martial law, establishing then the Queen's Own Loyal Regiment, and also the Ethiopian Regiment. And then his forces then return to their barracks or aboard ship in Norfolk. He learns then that Woodford has crossed the James, and so he is making his way along south of the south of the river of the James and north of the Dismal Swamp. When he gets to Suffolk, he sends his assistant or his second in command, Captain Charles Scott, with an advance party of about 200 to make their way to Great Bridge as he tries to run resupplies in Suffolk. That takes place about the 25th. He separates the force and has Captain Charles Scott is there on November 28th. Then after he runs his supplies and gets what he possibly can, he then follows with the main force and arrives in Great Bridge on the 2nd of December. Remember, it's the 1st of December. The Virginia Convention has approved the participation of North Carolinians. And so I believe that you're going to see some elements of the Edenton Military District will have arrived just about when the main force arrives, and then probably there's a trickling effect. And ultimately, Colonel Edward Vail is there with the majority of his force. With that, not knowing that the North Carolinians have arrived, Dunmore, knowing that they may be afoot, decides he needs to get the Great Bridge to control or take down the defenses that the Patriots have before they're reinforced. Again, just for our references, Colonel Howe and the 2nd North Carolinians come and arrive between the 10th and the 12th after the battle, but there's certainly North Carolinians there for the battle. Tactically looking at that battle, this is a sketch of Great Bridge at the time. This I have turned upside down, so the top of the map is north, and at the bottom is the south. Knowing that North Carolinians could reinforce on the night of the 8th of December, Lord Dunmore gathers all his officers aboard his ship, and he tells his ground commanders, I want you to get as many regulars as you can, augment yourself with naval detachments to man cannon, and I want you to march through the night to get to Great Bridge. On the morning of the 9th, I want you to take down the blockage to the road. You can see the Lazy M or Lazy W is the Patriots' defenses, and they also created redoubts on the flank. Now, they're constructed in a way that they would protect artillery or cannon, and this is obvious to Lord Dunmore. He knows that his fort is going to be a stockade fort, so it's not going to be able, it can withstand small arms, but it won't be able to withstand cannon. So he knows time is of the essence. His comment back to General Howe describes then why he needs it, because he anticipates there's about 1,000 that are closing on his position, denying him the provisions of Southeast Virginia and Northeast Carolina. With that in mind, then he creates that fort, and then through the night of the 8th, marches about 120, 140, depending on your resources, march through the night and get to Great Bridge about 3:30 in the morning, with the mission to attack the very next at first light. On the other side is William Woodford. Now, unknown to Lord Dunmore, Woodford is already there with his main force, and they have established defenses there at that Lazy W earlier on with militia. But then, if you remember, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Scott gets there and starts to organize the ground with more force, and then by the 2nd of December, Colonel Woodford's there with his force. So all total, come that first week, there is almost 1,000 there at Great Bridge, combining the advanced force, the main force, and the forces that are up from North Carolina. Lord Dunmore thinks it's only a couple hundred. And so he figures with his force, which is now 120 regulars, a couple hundred provisional, and a couple hundred of the Ethiopian regiment, a total force of about 650, that he shouldn't have a problem. But that's not to be. After they arrive, then at break of day, they send out their advance guard to try to get across the Great Bridge. The Great Bridge is this position just outside the fort. They send a company forward to secure the bridge and to put in cannon that would be about in that location. so that they can command the field of battle with 2 4-pounders. That's all the cannon that are there, other than smaller swivel guns. But then as they do that, then the Culpeper Minutemen, but without cannon, take these flanking positions. And then, of course, he can reinforce his main defense with his muskets as the battle ensues. The early scouts are the first to engage. This is a depiction of William Flora, who's a free black man fighting on the side of the Norfolk County militia. They engage the forces first and then draw back to the main defenses. And then when the grenadiers cross the bridge and get within 50 to 70 yards of that main defense line, the Patriots open up with a volley of fire. That first volley of fire then staggers the British forces. It downs a number. It actually downs the assault commander, who is Captain Charles Fordyce. He bandages himself. He rallies his men. He gives them their battle cry, "The day is our own." And as he closes on the fort, then he is then encountered on his right flank with the Culpeper Minutemen, who now have created a force down on the flank. And those forces can range the flank of the British. Muskets to the front for the next 50 yards. But what he wasn't counting on is there'd be hundreds of riflemen on his right flank that range 200 out to 300 yards with their weapons, which are accurate. And so in the course of about 30 minutes, half of the regulars are either killed, captured, or wounded. And the British have to withdraw back to their fort. What's left on the field is an interesting description in Atkinson's volume on the American Revolution, his first volume. He has a chapter on the Battle of Great Bridge, but he comments that the bodies that were out in front of the Patriot defenses looked like someone who had just retrieved wet laundry off the line, and it blew off the line, and just all these red limp pieces of cloth across the battlefield. The regular death toll for that was 3 officers and 14 privates. The commander of the assault force, Captain Charles Fordyce, was killed along with 2 other officers. And so with that, they disengage and go back to their defenses. Both Patriots and the British stay in the British in their fort, and the Patriots in their own defensive positions. Many of them want to go further. They want to cross the bridge and press on. But Colonel Woodford says, no, don't expose yourself to their cannon. They're in a fort. So let's see how this plays out. The other thing I would offer up is, were they celebratory? Were they ready to charge ahead? I think their commander was a bit more reserved. Why? Because the previous big battle is Bunker Hill. And how many assaults did it take for the British to take Bunker Hill? It's on the 3rd assault when they finally make it. So Colonel Woodford has only encountered 1 assault. He's anticipating there'll be more. And some of the prisoners say, "Oh, the Highlanders will be up next." Now, the Highlanders are not in this unit right now, but he doesn't know what to expect. So everybody stays pat. But under cover of darkness, then the British commander, Captain Samuel Leslie, whose nephew was one of the officers lost, retreats under cover of darkness back to Norfolk. Again, the different perceptions of battle, one from the British, it's a bit more factual as you read through that. And then the Patriot reaction is a bit, those that have not seen battle, it's a bit more emotional. I'll just read that one. "The scene when the dead and wounded were brought off was too much. I then saw the horrors of war in perfection, worse than can be imagined. 10 and 12 bullets through many, limbs broke in 2 or 3 places, brains turning out. Good God, what a sight. Now, when you walk the battle site, you'll be 7 to 12 feet above where that took place. And so we do have the ground where the battle took place, although it's pretty much altered because you now have the Albemarle and Chesapeake Canal going right through the battlefield, what is now the battle site. So the next day, Colonel Woodford scouts out. He sees that the fort is abandoned. They have left. And he reports back to the Committee of Safety that based on what he saw and the presence of blood on that bridge, it must have been more than 100 casualties. Again, the British only kept track of what happens to regulars. Provisional troops, they tended not to keep track of. So under cover of darkness, they're back in Norfolk. They get aboard the Navy ships. The next day, the citizens of Norfolk are very concerned. It's a Tory town. Most seaports are Tory towns. They're loyal to the crown. They've got the world's greatest navy, and so why not? They see benefit in being loyal. Many of the citizens in Norfolk are loyal. In fact, if you come to listen to Andrew Lawler's pitch, he'll get into the discussions as to the attitudes of the Virginians, both loyal and disloyal or rebel, as we talk about the challenges of holding southeastern Virginia for Dunmore. It's an excellent book if you get a chance to get your hands on it. Perfect Frenzy. He'll give you a great presentation. But now that they're back, all the forces are aboard ship. Those that are loyal to the crown try to get aboard ship. And if they can't, if there's no room aboard the ship, then they're going to get their own ships or a friend ship and get within under cover of the guns. Because they don't think the Patriots will treat them well once they get up to Norfolk. And there's nothing stopping them. There's no other defensive works. Great Bridge was the only land crossing to get to Norfolk from outside the area, and now they've lost it, and there's no other defense. Like I said, then they're reinforced with the North Carolinians, Continentals. With that, Colonel Robert Howe, who holds a Continental Commission, so he is senior now to Colonel William Woodford, but they create a cooperative command, even though the more senior Continental officer would be in charge. They both serve in charge as they come forward to Norfolk. And so come the middle of December, there's 1,200 Patriots occupying Norfolk, while the Tories and the British force is aboard ships in Norfolk Harbor. They do not allow the British to come ashore for provisions, to get more grain, to get water, to have baking ovens. They say, no, you stay there, and we'll keep shooting at you if you come ashore. Finally, they've had enough. And they said, by the end of the month, and it's the last day of December, they say, we're coming ashore tomorrow. And if you give us any problem, we're going to bring this town down around your ears. And so the next day comes, they send land forces ashore. They establish small fires to create smoke, tar and shingle, so they can get their troops in there to get provisions. They're driven off, but the fire runs out of control. And as truth be known, the Patriots helped it along because the theory was that it's a Tory town, why don't we burn it, and they'll have no reason to come back. This is lost in historic records for about 70 years because the aftermath of this was the British burned Norfolk. In fact, in the Declaration of Independence, George, you burn our city. Well, they're referring specifically to Falmouth, Mass, and Charleston, Mass, and Norfolk, Virginia. So it's neatly tucked away. But once 70 years, 7 decades go by, they recover restitution records, and they see that most of that burning was a result of the Patriots spreading the blaze. There's over 70 ships where this city is floating outside, and he can't get them replenished diseases breaking out, both because of dysentery and then unfortunately smallpox. So it's a very unsatisfactory situation. Washington is insisting it's not good enough to just have them aboard ship. You have to get them out of the area. So after making that demand, the very next day, New Year's Day, January 1st, 1776, he starts to come ashore. He starts the bombardment. In fact, the calling card for Lord Dunmore is in the southeast corner of St. Paul's Church. If you ever make it up to Norfolk, it's there. It's not still there. It was repositioned there, but it's in the course of the time that he had there, they fire for 10 hours, and they have at their disposal 100 cannon. Not all of them can bear at the same time, but this lasts for 10 hours. And so the suffering in Norfolk must have been horrendous. But with that, then he pulls off Norfolk and then starts to at least get a well at Tucker's Point, which is now Hospital Point. So he doesn't clear the area entirely, but stays there, and then ultimately in the spring is driven from there. But there is a period of time, and Andrew Lawler will bring this up, when the British evacuate Boston in March of 76 until May of 76, the only British enclave with troops is Tucker's Point in Virginia. Everything else is either up in Nova Scotia or not in any of the colonies. As a result, January 15th, then the Virginia Convention, which is now the fourth convention, decides to abandon and destroy Norfolk and, oh, by the way, establish their own self-defense and to establish a colonial navy. If we look at the map and the events that take place, of course, we've got Colonel William Woodford, and he gathers his men, and once he makes it to Great Bridge, that is, if they started in Hampton, and some of them did, most of them were in Williamsburg, but that ends up being about a 100-mile trek. Battle of Great Bridge takes place. Of course, there is we get the reinforcement from North Carolina. Then that combined force under the leadership of Colonel Robert Howe of North Carolina and William Woodford press on to Norfolk, and then Lord Dunmore then establishes a foothold in Tucker's Point, but then by the spring goes all the way up to Gwynn's Island, as you see on the map here, and tries to establish a colony there where he can create a force that can retake Virginia. He's intent on not losing Virginia. But come the Fifth Virginia Convention, we decide for independence. And then, of course, the Declaration of Independence, the first week of July, that's followed by the 7th Virginia now that the Virginia forces have been expanded, that force him out of Gwynn's Island. And ultimately in August, the British presence leaves the Chesapeake Bay. Now, why is that important? Where does that leave us? First of all, the absence of governance. With the British gone, then the colonists have to decide politically how they're going to deal with each other. They've known how to do this. They've had a House of Burgesses for hundreds of years. And now they've created the Virginia Convention. So it's not a big mystery to them, but it's a decision that they take. And as a result of the Fifth Virginia Convention Declaration of May 15th, they go ahead and move that they should go to the Continental Congress and declare that the United Colonies be free and independent states. and they charged Richard Henry Lee to put that motion before the Continental Congress. In July, he does that, and then it takes a month before we can get enough people to decide that, yay, verily, we'll have our 4th of July, which was decided on the 2nd. But in the process, at the end of May, then we create a constitution, a Bill of Rights, and elect our first governor, Patrick Henry. As far as militarily, very significant from my point of view. You look at Norfolk and that area, Virginia, the breadbasket of the colonies in many regards. That then can be used to supply Washington's forces who are in the north. And as an example, the flag there in the Philadelphia area, but the star representing Valley Forge just to the outside. You can get resources now from Virginia. You can get forces from Virginia. Why? Because there's no presence of British in Virginia. And by the mere fact that they left the Chesapeake uncovered, you don't have to try to get all your goods up there by wagon, which takes a while. You can cut that to a third of the time because now you can use the Chesapeake Bay. It's unhindered, and you can get goods to Washington's forces. Great Bridge for the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Great Bridge is the last navigable portion in the south. Last truly navigable portion of the bay in the north is of Elkton, Maryland, and that's 2 days cart ride to Valley Forge. So you can see how this has an impact. The end result, and why does it matter? I would offer up 3 basic issues. First, it's the first example of Virginia militia defeating British regulars. And we would add both the Virginia and North Carolinian militia are doing this. So it takes the undecided that thought that their security came from the crown. And then they realize, well, maybe my security is with the Patriot movement. At the time of this battle, about a quarter of the population in Virginia was loyalist. And a third, perhaps Whigs, meaning they were in opposition to how it was being done. They weren't in opposition to the crown per se, but how they were being governed. And then there's that vast third in the middle that are fairly apathetic. They don't care. They're just trying to raise their family, their kids, make a farm work. And they are assuming that they're protected by the crown. But with this defeat of crown forces at Great Bridge, those that hadn't thought much about it start to think in terms of the Patriots. And so it starts to tip those that represent their fellow citizens that think in terms of independence. And then lastly, with the British forced out for 3 years, it keeps that supply line open to Washington forces that are in the north. I do believe it's of historic lasting significance. And it's because not just of what's happening there, but your involvement here. We don't have it as well defined as we'd like. We're going to continue to search records and try to figure out what happens. I know this museum, I've been up to take a look at William Skinner's beautiful sword. Perhaps that was there at Great Bridge. We're trying to determine if he was there for the battle or came up later. He was a lieutenant colonel at the time and part of Colonel Vale's force. So I believe it's likely he was here. And the records indicate so far that the stories are that he was here. Now, he didn't stay long as a commissioned officer, so I would venture to say that sword probably, there's a likelihood of it having been at the battle. So it involves this whole area because the resource here, as you know, even today, is complementary to what we do. A lot of different resources for this. I would like to mention that Michael Cecere will be at the museum in November a couple times and he's written about 20 books concerning this. Pat Hannum, the next entry down, did a lot of research on who's present at battles by name. And then who's not on here is the gentleman's going to be here later in the month, Andrew Lawler, who did it's the most recent volume concerning the circumstances around the Battle of Great Bridge, and it's well worth your read. If you want more on the museum, I know many of you have mentioned that you visit there, go to the website. We've redone it. Of course, dressed like this, I have no idea what a website is, but for those of you that are interested this year, because it is the 250th, on the 9th of December, we will start it in the morning. A number of us who have read about the battle, we're going to start and walk from the bridge and try to retrace the steps of those who were involved with the battle and just get into a general discussion on what may or may not have happened to the best of our research and our discussion. Later that day at 10, there's another battlefield tour, but that one's not for free. The early one, it's for free, and there's probably going to be free coffee. So come join us for that. 11 a.m., there's a musket salute at the monument. And then 12:30, Mike Cecere, one of the authors of the book, and he'll also be on the historic walk, along with Bert Dunkerley, who's written about national parks and sites, will be there. Additionally, we've got the Virginia 250 mobile museum will be there on that day, and actually throughout the month of December at the museum. And the Library of Virginia will have a display there as well. We love to talk about the battle, and if you've got more to add, we encourage you to come. I will close with this, is that as we get close, those of you that perhaps imbibe in the spirits, if you go and you purchase yourself a bottle of Woodford Reserve, there is a connection. The county in Virginia that was named Woodford was named for William Woodford, who served here as the commander at Great Bridge and later died aboard a prison ship in Wallabout Bay in New York. That particular county transferred to Kentucky when the division of Virginia took place. And it is in that county where Woodford Reserve is distilled. So I would offer you that on the 9th of December, at least, if you pour yourself a wee dram of Woodford Reserve, toast those who stood for liberty, both Virginians and North Carolinians, at the bridge. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, sir.
That flower on your hat, there's significance to that?
Okay, the cockade. Yeah, it was customary for most forces to wear a cockade if they were in a military unit. What's interesting is both Patriot and British forces wore the same black cockade. I think it was left over from the French and Indian War. A black cockade signified the House of Hanover, as opposed to a white cockade, which would have been Bonnie Prince Charlie, with the 1745 uprising of the Scots. And so later in the war, so it tended to be, it just was indicated military service. Some units you could tell by the color of rank, but rank was generally going to be done with epaulets and not with the color of the cockade. Some regiments did it, but then customarily, as you see a black cockade, it just meant he's in the military, and it could have been British or Patriot. Later in the war, the French come in the Grand Alliance. They're wearing white cockades, and then there's a Grand Alliance cockade that has black with white or white with black, and that was worn by those who took Yorktown. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, there's a whole history of cockades and what they mean. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Like the beginning, something I was totally unaware of. You mentioned during the French and Indian War that you implied that the British treated the Continentals fighting lesser or something. Could you give an example? I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. Yeah, part of serving with the crown as a provisional was taking a very humbled position. It was the incident that comes to mind is that Colonel Washington of the Provisional Regiment of Virginians would be required to take orders from a regular subaltern or a person that's four ranks its junior. So that didn't sit well with Washington, particularly when he was actually in the attack on Braddock's Road. He basically keeps it from going into, or at least saving some of the force. So yeah, the problem is he would have to answer to a lieutenant or a subaltern, even though he was a colonel of a regiment, but it was provisional, it wasn't regular. So, and there was his attempt was to try to get a regular commission, but he was denied. So I think one of my thoughts is if the British had only given him a regular commission, we probably wouldn't have had the war. No, a little simplistic, but yeah, you were treated differently, and they out of hand they dismiss your input because you weren't a regular officer. You didn't come from Britain. Other questions? Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I don't see too many people sleeping, so thank you very much.